Digital Podcast. I got a great, exciting guest today. This is Mindful Networking Mastery and Prosperity, Kerry George's Path to Business Growth. Purpose of the show exists to transform your life and business through conversations that inspire, equip, and uplift. I connect busy people to powerful voices, authors, leaders, and world changers you should know. What if lasting business growth starts with a shift in how you think about relationships and collaboration? Kerry George proves that it's possible. As a collaboration guru and network extraordinaire, she helps entrepreneurs and leaders unlock revenue through high quality, mutually beneficial connections. Kerry is a seasoned networker and strategic connector who has spent over a decade influencing entrepreneurs and accelerating revenue through deliberate networking, masterminds, coaching, and consulting. She has run more than 8,000 networking meetings and facilitated over 2,000 mastermind sessions, bringing together decision makers in closed boardroom settings to solve real business challenges. You'll hear Kerry's powerful journey from traditional networking to purpose-driven approach that consistently turns connections into revenue. This episode isn't just about more leads. It's about building a network philosophy that aligns with values, time, and money. Calls to action, ready to elevate your network and your revenue? Connect with Kerry at YouTube channel, her event listings, Out with the Walls. Kerry can support you, your team, or your audience in building powerful, profit-driven collaborations. And with that, I would like to welcome Kerry to the program. How are you doing today, Kerry?
I'm awesome. How are you doing?
Fantastic, because if I complain, no one's listening. So I'm going to keep rolling with it. So
that's true.
People are always curious on how you got on the business that you did and how did this all come about and how did you move from an ordinary networker to the networker extraordinaire?
Well, I have to go back in history here to right after we got off the ark. It's been a while. So about 2010, I decided to go into business for myself. I was a single mom with 3 kids that were kind of preteen age at that time. And, I was trying to start, at first it was a marketing business. I wanted to help business owners with marketing. And I was leaving the house and trying to get in front of business owners. And at first, I kind of got to tell you a little something here that kind of was going on in our life. Like we were really struggling financially, like really. And so I was going out trying to get marketing clients. And I was going at first trying to get in front of oil and gas companies in my city. And I would drive like an hour to get there. And the gargoyles at the gate wouldn't let me in. They're like, thou shalt not pass, the secretaries that won't let you in. And I was struggling financially really bad. I knew how to market. I had been doing these things like online marketing, creating Facebook pages and email things and stuff like that. And today we all know about this stuff. But in 2010, this was brand new. So as I'm getting in front of big business, they're telling me, oh, we're not interested in this. And I'm struggling financially, so bad at that point that we actually lost our house. And at that point, my kids, they're, 8 and 10 and, 14, in this age group. And I literally have to farm them out to friends because we're homeless. And I am sleeping in my car in Canada, which is not a good place to be, particularly coming into October. And I remember that October of that year, I'm literally in my car listening to self-help tapes, CDs and stuff on how to be wealthy, thinking about the irony of it because I am sitting there freezing and I'm parked about a block away from where one of my kids is because I just want to be close to them, And so it's just, it was a tremendously traumatic period in our life. And I wanted to change into something that, more morph like a butterfly into something new. And I was stuck. So I started going to networking meetings. Someone invited me just by chance to this networking meeting. And I got there and started talking about online marketing to small business owners instead of to the big companies like the oil and gas companies. And as soon as I started talking to the small business owner, I get them surrounding me after the meeting, asking me questions. Will I come and teach and train on this thing? You know, the networking organization asked if I would do some volunteerism so I could train. And I realized I found my peeps. Here they were. They wanted to hear what I had to
Awesome.
say, and they were willing to pay for the knowledge. And so that kind of is what got me started in networking. The next thing I knew, I was running an organization. I was at first volunteering. Then I took over a small group, and I learned to monetize that group into, you know, an actual something that made money. And as time went on, I was starting to make the money marketing, but I was also making money networking. And I was running this group, and I took over another group. And I realized over the next couple of years that I love the networking more than I love doing marketing for people. And so that's kind of how it all got started. And about 2012, at the end of the year, I had some investors help me and took over one of the largest business networks in Western Canada at that time. And with a stroke of a pen, I was like the networking guru, you know, running a business network that was like, had all kinds of business owners from, you know, small storefronts and also, you know, insurance people and real estate people and mortgage brokers. And, you know, there were network marketers in there, and then there were salespeople, and there were people who owned 2 or 3 locations. And all of a sudden I had like hundreds of members that were now following me and were part of my organization. And that's where everything started to really change and transform. And I started to grow this big business network, which today is global.
You know, with such a dramatic story, I can't help but say it, but I think you should write a book. So what happened?
I did write a book. Actually, I wrote a book. I've written several over the years, but this one is my my favorite one about all of this right now. It's called Smart Networking, the $150,000 Method. And yeah, it's got some of those stories in it of how we got started, and you know, how to do networking in a way that is profitable, because that's something I started to learn as I started to work with others. I was so lucky in those early years, 2012 to 15, I was mentored, and people took me by the hand and they showed me how to do networking in a way that was profitable. And at first I was just trying to get marketing clients, you know, and that was my drive. But and it became very effective at getting clients through networking. But I started to realize as I began running a networking organization that other people weren't having that experience. Oftentimes they weren't mentored. They didn't know what to do. They would go out there and try to network, but they'd spin their tires in the mud. They try this organization. I don't like the way that is. And they try another group, and, oh, you know, I didn't like that. But they couldn't quite put their finger on what was missing. So we began interviewing our most successful members and training our people to have success in networking. And so CIBN Connect has become a global force where we, you know, network. We do over 500 meetings a year, but we also train people on like how to be a better speaker and how to sell, and, you know, how to actually turn the networking experience into something that makes money for them in their business. And that's what smart networking really is all about. I mean, we've got the great stories in there, but it's also the methods of making money for your business, whatever your business might be, and how to do it in person or online or anywhere you might go network.
You know, for one of those people, and there may be some out there who say, I don't know how to do this, so I'm curious. Now you have a business, you're trying to get it going, you have children. How and when do you possibly find time to write?
Well, you know, I think all writers have a process. I do a little teaching on this, on how to actually do this. One of my favorite events every year is a mountain mastermind that I put on, where people come to Banff with me for 6 days. And we actually show them how to write a book like this. And, but I'll give you a couple tips right here that I just love to do when I'm writing. So first of all, you create your outlines, and, you know, there's ways of creating outlines. But once you have an outline created, what I like to do is create an outline within the outline. So your outline is like your chapters, right? You figure out these are my headings. And then you go to one heading and you start making some notes on that heading, like what kind of things you want to cover in that chapter, and you just throw them into the outline. Sometimes that process is something that you do like early mornings, evenings, weekends. I don't like to do the outline creation during my work time. I don't like to do projects during work time, because if you do that like at the best time to be in front
Yeah.
of a customer, you'll soon go broke because you're not having any sales
Mhm.
appointments. Okay, so projects need to be done mornings, evenings, later in the day, or weekends. Now, the other thing I like to do once I have my outline, this is the fun part. Yeah, everyone has one of these. It's called a smartphone. It's called a smartphone because it's smart. Usually on your smartphone, you have a button that you can push to record. And if you don't, you can actually even just go into like documents, like a
Mhm.
Word document or
Sure.
something like that, or a
Sure.
Google document, and you have a record button. So what I love to do for the writing process is go for a walk and carry my phone or connect it to the speaker and just talk to myself as I walk. And so I just tell stories. I go along with my outline. I go, today I'm going to be talking about how to sell better from the networking process, and I just start talking into my phone and recording as
Okay.
I'm going along, and it's getting the whole thing. And I get back to my house. If I went for a 45-minute walk, I often have a
Mm.
chapter written. So I use my smartphone, and I love to use it walking or waiting in the car when you have to wait for somebody. That's a great time to rattle off a piece of a
I
chapter. So that's why I do it as a
I
busy
always
person.
say that computers, like phones, are dumb. People are smart, but that's a smart way to use a smart phone. That's a very effective use of it.
Yeah.
So curious about the book, and two, like what kind of tips can you give? Actionable tips, things that you've noticed that people were struggling with, and what sort of problems you've been able to solve for them in the book.
Absolutely. One of the main things that we start out with right away, I think, is chapter 6. We really get into how to do an infomercial that converts to business. Okay. Because when people go out networking, they have a little pitch. They say, this is who I am. This is what I
Yeah.
do. Right. And, if you just say, this is who I am, this is what I do, and it sounds like everybody else, people aren't really
Hmm.
moved, right? So we have 5 different methods of doing an infomercial. We show you some ways that are a lot easier and more fun. We also show you some ways that really get an appointment booked, because that's the bottom line. If you're actually going out to do networking, it's not about being memorable. It's not about standing out. People think that that's what it's about, but it's not. Because if you don't get an appointment booked, none of that matters. I've seen people show up in online meetings doing stuff like combing their hair and using props and doing all this stuff. Nobody cares. Okay. You need to say something that grabs their attention and moves them to do an action right now. And the best action is book an appointment with me. Here's my calendar link, and drop that into the chat with nothing else. Okay. So we show you how to grab their attention, get them to book with you right now so that you get an appointment booked, because that can move the sales
Sure.
process forward. And that can be done in an in-person meeting as well. When you're doing shaking hands, talking to people, you can actually say, well, this is what I do. I think that you and I could get together because I could solve some challenges that you're having, or so I have some solutions for you. Let's book a time right now to do that. I have 2:00 on Tuesday available, or 3 on Thursday. Which would be better for you? Let's pick a time right now and book it. And I've actually booked 34 appointments at an in-person meeting in
Mm.
2 hours using that method on an in-person networking. So, and we've done it, probably up to about 20 in online meetings where you're just using the chat back and forth in a 2-hour meeting. So very, very effective to ask for the meeting, because when you're at a networking meeting, everyone wants to network. So we're beating around the bush collecting cards in person or collecting data by collecting the chats online. And all of that is a
Mhm.
collection. It's not a booked appointment.
Sure.
So go for the appointment and get it booked, and then move your sales process forward. And that's how you turn the networking experience into a sales
One
experience.
of the things I was curious about, and could back up just a bit, there are people who get really discouraged, excuse me, who don't always get the job that they're looking for. And I'm wondering if you could advise people who are in that process, they're between jobs, they're trying to find jobs, and they're networking to get a job. And it can be a very frustrating experience. So what would you recommend for them?
Well, we have people who don't get the job that they're looking for. We also have business owners who don't get the client that they're looking for. It's a similar experience in networking. And usually it's because they're not moving the ball forward and actually going aggressively to book the appointment with the person that they need. So at CIBN, one of the tools that we give people is we have a tool that's called a Chrome extension that allows you to go look at who other members in the network actually know, who they really do know, using LinkedIn. You don't need premium LinkedIn. You don't need Sales Navigator. It just works with our Chrome extension. But you can look them up. You can see who they know, and it will actually make a connection for you so that you can ask that person to introduce you directly to the one that you need to meet, which might be the hiring person, within a company, for example, if you were looking for a job, or if you were looking for the decision maker in a company because you wanted to, pitch your service to them, you would be able to see who knew them and ask for the introduction. Because when you go to networking events and you meet these great people, they will often say, oh, I will introduce you to so-and-so, but they don't. They never get around to it. They're too busy. There's also this no like and trust factor. And so far they only got to like you. So they're not thinking about giving you the lead because they don't trust you and know you yet. But this tool allows that to happen because you can actually see that the person you met, Bob, knows Steve. Steve is the guy you need to meet. You can say, Bob, would you be willing to introduce me? And it's quickly done through an online press of the button. And he's like, yeah, absolutely, no problem. Here, click. And you're introduced to Steve and you're in a conversation with him instantly. So we've circumvented that problem at CIBN.
For a lot of authors too, if you walk us through this whole process of publishing, because there's various options out there. Do I self-publish? Do I want a hybrid, traditional publishing? Just walk us through that. And then you also could bring some more veteran experience because it's book one and some other things since then. So you know quite a bit in this area.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of publishing, and also I've been around thousands of people who have been publishing since 2010, since we got started. We started with hundreds of members a year, and today we're in front of thousands of people. Really, since 2019, we've been working with thousands every year. So I've seen everything you can imagine in the publishing world. One of the things that when I published, I really wanted to have a book that made us money. Okay. I own a business and a business needs to make money. Okay. Or you're out of business. And a lot of things that I was seeing with authors, the methods that they were using for publishing generally cost money, but don't usually make money. And I mean, I've seen things like where you just, you spend $2,500 and you're part of a book project with a bunch of other people in a joint book. Okay. That's one thing I've seen a lot. Another one I've seen is you spend $25,000 and you have your own book and some PR company is supposedly helping you. In both of those scenarios, I rarely meet people whose book is really selling, even though they might say they are a #1 bestseller because they got all their friends to buy it on Tuesday evening at 2:00 in the morning in February on a keyword. And that to me is bogus. That's not real. That's not like, so you got the bragging rights that you're a #1 bestseller, but you haven't sold thousands of copies of your book, right? So for me, both of those methods were like not something that's going to equate to bottom line revenue. So over the years, I've examined some other possibilities. I've got a good friend, a mentor of mine, who has sold 80,000 copies of his book. He did that by becoming an influencer with big corporations and getting in front of those groups and working with the executives. They would actually, order like 1,000 or 3,000 copies at once for the whole organization. So that was a method that made money with his book and also got him the speaking gigs that he wanted and got him the training gigs that he wanted. So I looked very seriously at that possibility. But I wanted to do something that would actually, really earn from a book. So the method that I decided on after looking at dozens of different methods and talking to all kinds of different publishers and people that I knew that were doing it in the network and beyond, I decided instead to go with a different version where we would create a book. And the book is designed to actually sell ads. And the ads make money.
Yeah.
So I don't really care if it sells on Amazon because I didn't make it to sell it on Amazon. I do have it up there. People can go and find Smart Networking just by researching it, and they can buy it on Amazon. An actual hard copy or soft copy is available. No problem. It's there. But I didn't make it for that purpose. If people go and do that, that's great. What I made it for was that I wanted to solve this question that people had about why is my company, CIBN Connect, why is it the best place to network, right? Because whatever it is you do, whether you're a business coach, you try and get people to choose you instead of someone else, like, wouldn't it be profitable to have a book that solved that question forever? You know, if someone read it, they'd be a raving fan and be willing to pay you $25K to take your consultation for the year.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah.
Right? So that's how I wrote this book. I wrote it in a way that it answers the question, like, why is this the best network? Why is this the best thing? And at the end of each chapter, it's got a QR code usually, or a call to action. In those early chapters, it has simple things like go to our YouTube channel, CIBN TV, and subscribe right now. Something really simple and easy, but leads people through this process of kind of following the directions as they go through it. And maybe later it says, hey, we want you to do this. We have a download for you. Here's a great download, you know, go and download this free thing, you know. Like, I think we've got cibnconnect.com/outwitting the wolves, which is a nice free PDF. Okay. So something like that would be in like chapter 3, go download this thing. And as they're going through the book, they're not only learning about why you are the best at whatever it is that you do, they're becoming more and more, engrossed in who you are, why you have the best answers, why you have the solutions. And by the end of the book, they're willing to buy whatever it is you're trying to sell. If it's your consultation, great. In this case, it's, we're showing them like the path to better networking. So we're saying, now go to cibnconnect.com and look at the membership options, and it's leading them right to that decision. So it makes money through that sale of that decision, but it also makes money immediately as we sell ads. We buy ads. We purchase ads on Facebook and Google, and we can buy a $4.95 PDF copy of the book, Smart Networking, the $150,000 Method. You can find that for this book by going to kerrygeorge.com/book. Okay. And you download that PDF concept right there. And then there's an upsell comes up and says, would you like to join the network as well for $27 a month? Generally, about 1 out of 10 people say yes, they would. And they click through on that. Well, because of that ad process, what we have is we have a book that is self-selling. Okay. The ads that are being sold, maybe they cost me $1,000 in a month if I'm running just a $1,000 a month program. But as long as I'm making $1,050 back through the sale of the book and the upsell, I didn't spend any money. I had free marketing. And as soon as I can get it to the place where the book is selling more than the ads are costing, it's literally a license to print money. And then every book that's sold is selling memberships. It's convincing people that I am the best at what I do, that the business network is the best, the best one to join. It's answering all the questions about competitors. So they're never comparing me to competitors again or a group to competitors. They're looking at what we have as the right one, the special one, the one that will answer their problems and give them the solutions that they need. They know how it's going to work because they've read the book. So now they show up as raving fans. I don't have to convince them that, that we know what we're talking about because they could see it through the process of reading the book. And it's just an amazing thing. I mean, now I've got a book that is truly an asset. It's earning. And what I have found in the publishing process is that a book will cost you minimum $2,500 to get it published. Okay. Minimum. Because if you get a professional editor and you get somebody even to upload it on the platforms, minimum $2,500. Well, I have several books I've written. I don't want to spend $2,500 every time.
Sure.
Right? And I don't want my book to be a money-sucking vortex. I don't want to pay $25,000 to a publisher who promised me they'd market it, and then later I find in the fine print I still have to market it. Which this happens all the time.
Yes.
Right? So by using this method, we actually have circumvented all of those problems. Okay. Now this book is earning right from the get-go. Once it earns enough, then I create the voice copy, the Audible one, right? Once that earns enough, then I go on to publish the next book. So now I've got my books paying for themselves, my books earning money for the network, selling the product or service that I wanted it to sell. And I have found that that is just a much better process for publishing than so many of the others that are out there, which really generally don't make any money except for the people who are selling the publishing thing or the editor or the whatever it is, the PR person that's sold the package, right? They're making money, but the author is not, because they're not selling copies. So through this method, all of that is covered. The book is earning. And now I've turned it into a real asset for myself or for my company.
What's really refreshing about what you're saying. It's the book as business. That's what it essentially comes down to. And it's almost like a chicken egg question. Like, do I have a business or I have a book? But your book really is your business. And it's a really unique way of approaching things because you're making money rather than throwing money and giving it away to everybody else.
The publishing books and the book publishing industry is such a money-sucking vortex. I mean, it takes so much. And after the effort of building that book, I mean, so many people spend a year or 2 years building their book, and the more that you're on a big project like that, the less you're earning too in other areas. Like you're not having as many sales appointments, and you're not talking to as many customers because you're in the middle of this big project. Well, that book should go somewhere, or else what was all that effort for?
You've really turned things around on its head. So I guess what you'd mentioned you had some other things. So other volumes have also become part of your ongoing business, and you've generally turned it into a revenue generating vehicle for your business.
Yes. Yeah. Every asset you build in your business needs to make revenue. Otherwise, what's the point of creating it? Like if you're doing a giveaway or something like that. And, we mentioned I have this one, and you really like the title of it, Outwitting the Wolves, sounds really sexy. So Outwitting the Wolves it's a PDF, it's a download, and you can go to, cibnconnect.com/Outwitting the Wolves and download that free thing right now. No problem. But what happens when you do that? Okay. Well, you are then invited in to get other things from us, right? So now that's helping build the email list. Well, an email list is actually a really great way of building revenue in your business if you know what to do with it, right? So again, so many authors that I meet, they don't have an email list. They don't have a following, and if you really want books to sell on an ongoing basis, another thing to know is that you need to be an influencer. So having an email list, having large social media followings is part of being an influencer. If you don't have at least 10,000 followers, I'm sorry, you're not even a leader. Hello? Yeah. If you're a leader, truly, when you look behind you, there's people following you. Okay? And you need processes in place to grow the following, to communicate with the people who are following you. Okay? So you want to have those communication channels. So building that email list is critical. So things like this help build that email list. Every opportunity to get people to follow you on the social channels, you need to pick one particularly that you're really, really going to spend some time on and grow that channel. I've been pulling 150K a year off of LinkedIn since LinkedIn was a thing, and that's because I have thousands of followers on LinkedIn that I can talk to without spamming them. I don't spam my LinkedIn followers. So there's methods of doing it, but also you got to have the numbers. If you don't have 10,000 that, in a platform, you don't have the numbers to monetize. So you have to have simple steps over and over again that you do to grow that following.
With all these great ideas, and I just got to back up the original story too. Got a phenomenal story, transformative story, turning things around. I'm sure that people want to reach out to you, and there's a number of things that they could do. What would you recommend, and how do they get a hold of you to be a part of this really amazing journey that you've had?
Well, the first place I'd say go to is cibnconnect.com. You're going to get all your questions about networking answered there, and you can communicate with me through there. Another website I'd bring to your attention is kerrygeorge.com. Nice and simple, easy to follow. Those are great ways to communicate with us. And of course, we also like to tell people about our YouTube channel, CIBN TV. You just go search that CIBN TV. It will pop up in YouTube. And what I love about the YouTube channels, we have loaded it with free content to help you in your business. You can really get some great stuff there on how to, help for your business. Just go to the playlist because it's all organized. He says, here's all the stuff you need to know about social media, for example, and they'll give you how-tos and everything in that section.
Well, I appreciate that, and especially appreciate your time. I know you're very busy, so I appreciate you taking some time out and chatting with us and giving us both an inspiring story, an inspiring business story, and much success with your continued efforts. Thank you very, very much for being my guest today.
Awesome. Looking forward to talking to you again in the future, and have a great day.
If you've learned something, and I always do, Kerry's amazing guest. Thank you for listening in. Hopefully that you subscribe. Also, get into the Doctor of Digital podcast. If you know someone and you can assist you, reach out to me on LinkedIn and create a valued book in 90 days. It's written presentations. Connect on LinkedIn. Wherever you might find me, it's easy enough, the Doctor of Digital podcast. I also want to thank the supporters of the program. That is the publishers of both Burning America and also On Track, Ian Hunter, for their continued support. Until the next exciting episode, thank you for listening in. Till that